The BBC understands that the former CEO of fashion giant Abercrombie Fitch, Mike Jeffries, and his British partner Matthew Smith are facing criminal charges of sex trafficking. They had previously denied allegations of wrongdoing. The FBI opened an investigation last year after the BBC revealed claims that Mike Jeffries and his partner sexually exploited and abused men at events that they hosted in their New York residences and hotels around the world.
Okay, as we reported yesterday, we're going to continue on with it, but the question is, there's a lot more entailed in this company, this clothing brand, Abercrombie & Fitch. There's a lot more connections to this. Let's talk about it.
Ooh, you are listening to the Billy Flint Experience.
Thank you so much for joining the Billy Flint Experience. I'm your host, Billy Flint. You're coming live here from Germany. It's kind of late. Kind of spent most of the day doing a lot of research. Surprising research, I have to add. And as we reported last night, or actually yesterday evening, we broke the news that the ex-CEO of Abercrombie & Fitch clothing brand, Mike Jeffries, has been arrested in Florida. Him and his partner and another gentleman for their crimes of sex trafficking. But I have to repeat, I did a lot of research today and uncovered some really, really startling information. I wanted to share that because I don't think a lot of people really understand that these allegations actually, first I want to add this. There's a lot of, it was already starting on YouTube now that people are saying that Sean Diddy Combs has snitched and got Mike Jeffries into this hot water. But what a lot of people don't understand is that he has been under investigation for at least 4 years now, way before this Sean Diddy Combs debacle took place. And again, I did a lot of deep diving and research and uncovered some very startling information. And I want to kind of go over it because again, from last night or from yesterday evening, I reported on the fact that even though this is Mike Jeffries and him being an ex-CEO of Abercrombie & Fitch, and I also stated that there are definitely going to be more people connected to these allegations. And I was saying that there's going to be photographers, and there's going to be possibly designers, art directors, stylists, other models. This is just a tip of the iceberg. And true enough, as I was reporting yesterday, that yes, there has been, and it's kind of like disheartening to say because of the fact that, again, me being a photographer in my career in Atlanta, Georgia, as a fashion photographer, that it was one photographer that I kind of looked up to, and it's kind of embarrassing to say, but he goes by the name of Bruce Weber. And again, these are just allegations, and we're going to play the audio that I come across, and these are models that were involved with Abercrombie and Fitch that did the modeling for that clothing brand. And of course, Bruce Weber, the world-renowned fashion photographer, was the main photographer or the head photographer that did all of their ads. Again, it's very disheartening. And for those who don't know, of course, Bruce Weber, again, he's world-renowned. And on his Wikipedia page, and I just want to read it because it's kind of interesting, but it says Bruce Weber is an American fashion photographer and filmmaker known for his work with fashion brands and magazines. His ad campaign includes projects for Calvin Klein, Ralph Lauren, Pirelli, Abercrombie and Fitch, Revlon, Miu Miu, which is Prada's kind of sister brand, Giorgio Armani, Louis Vuitton, Gianni Versace, Vogue magazine, GQ magazine, Vanity Fair, Elle magazine, Life magazine, Interview magazine, and Rolling Stone magazine. So this gentleman, Bruce Weber, is, I don't know, I guess you would say he is definitely world renowned. But a lot of people don't, if you're not into the, I don't know, if you're not in that arena of fashion or art, you would never know anything about this gentleman. But again, he was a head photographer of Abercrombie and Fitch. So he was behind a lot of their ad campaigns, in which, as we reported yesterday, mainly their ads represented a lot of scantily clad men. That's what a lot of their ads for that clothing brand. Of course, they had women, but mostly it was men, scantily clad. Some of their ads actually had partial nudity. And again, like I said, this is just scratching the surface. And it's embarrassing for me to report on this because of me being in the photography arena and also having been in the fashion photography aspect at one point in my life. It's really disheartening to actually report on this, that I see that this gentleman, and it's again alleged because models actually named him and actually reported that he, along with Mike Jeffries, allegations of SA and their prostitution ring. So my thing is that possibly Abercrombie and Fitch as a store brand was a front, or as a clothing brand was a front for a prostitution ring. And again, like I said, I have some audio. And I want you to take a listen to this. This is very, very, very interesting. And not only does it actually name Bruce Weber, but also another gentleman's name. And I'm pretty much sure everyone has heard of this guy's name. This older man goes by the name of Les Wexner. Now, those who know anything about Jeffrey Epstein would know about Les Wexner. So we're going to take a listen to this audio, because this is going to get real interesting.
Every piece of Abercrombie was by design. by Mike's design. The stores, the product, the whole thing, he would sign off on.
What was the main thing that motivated him?
Mike Jeffries, from the start, used his abilities and the resources he had from Wexner to begin marketing.
Les Wexner's company bought Abercrombie, so they kind of tried to revamp the brand.
It was a company that had shaving cream, books, fishing gear, and all the stuff that old guys like Teddy Roosevelt would probably love to have.
When Les first bought it, he tried to sort of recreate that and couldn't make that work, which is when I think he brought in Mike Jeffries, a failed CEO of Alcott and Andrews, which was a women's brand that focused on professional businesswomen apparel.
He brings in Mike Jeffries and says, let's try it again.
And that's when the idea of Abercrombie, as we know it today, came into formation.
The bet was that if we get the right guys in the right fraternities to wear the clothes and be ambassadors for the clothes, then other people are gonna want to copy that. It was like pre-digital, like influencer marketing.
As a manager at Abercrombie, they teach you very early on about recruiting. You have to recruit. But not only do you have to recruit good-looking people. And this is what good-looking looks like. We literally had a book.
Exhibiting the A&F look is a tremendously important part of the overall experience at the Abercrombie & Fitch stores. Our people in the store are an inspiration to the customer. A neatly combed, attractive, natural, classic hairstyle is acceptable. Dreadlocks are unacceptable for men and women.
Okay, I have to stop it right there. Now, as we reported yesterday, that Abercrombie & Fitch as a company basically only catered to European Americans. They didn't cater, their clientele wasn't geared towards people of color. They only wanted young, mainly men, and some females to actually represent that clothing brand. And as you hear right there, they had a book, a guideline for anyone that wanted to work for that clothing brand. They could not have locks. And most of the people of color that actually did work for that clothing brand within their brick and mortar stores throughout the United States, if they were people of color like Asian Americans, Latinos, Hispanics, and African Americans, they were pretty much relegated to the back stock area. And those that actually were on the floor as sales associates, they would only work on certain days. Definitely not on holidays or during the holiday schedule, but if they were working, it was basically during the daytime, and then, and only then, their schedules were slotted in such a way that if they weren't needed, they were taken off the schedule. So not only that, the clothing brand only catered to, again, young European Americans, clearly states right there that they had a guideline that if anyone decided to work for that clothing brand, they had to look a certain way. So we're going to continue.
Les Wexner built brands in one of two ways. He would either take an existing brand and try a new concept that lived within that existing brand, and then he would spin it out if it was successful, or he would acquire a brand that was failing.
At that point, Jeffries still had almost 10% of the stock. So nothing changed at all. A lot of these things come from the top down. Between Jeffries and Bruce Weber, we have some really troubling behavior.
I've always felt that men, just like women, really need an appreciation of themselves and the way they look physically.
Go! I don't think you can overstate the impact that Bruce Weber, his aesthetic, had. I mean, Mike put all his eggs in that basket.
The Abercrombie aesthetic is Bruce Weber's aesthetic. These joyful group shots, young people, sex, Americana, golden retrievers out in the countryside.
Bruce Weber's, I think, the highest paid photographer. He was famous, and he was doing Calvin Klein, he was doing everyone, and he made a beautiful book called Bear Pond.
I'd never seen anything like it, and that's when I knew absolutely it was gay.
Every gay man I know owns. There's a copy over there.
Bruce Weber was able to take advantage of his power more because he was so famous and he was so out there.
It was very well known with Bruce that he liked young men.
He's gonna invite you over and he's gonna try his good touch, bad touch thing.
You would put your hand on your chest and he put his hand on your hand, kind of like talking to relax. And then it was, I'm gonna lower your hand, tell me when to stop. My hand didn't move. So it's like, he's like, no, we're gonna lower your hand. And then and I'm like, no, that's where we're good.
Again, these are models speaking on their experience with Bruce Weber during a lot of his photo shoots. And of course, again, we reported last night that a lot of these allegations were taking place not only in America, but in different countries during these photo shoots, and how these young men were actually used as prostitutes. So I'm going to continue here.
I was a guy that would get a call from Bruce. He would get invited to come over for dinner. Like, hey, you should come over, I'm going to have dinner, play with my dogs, blah, blah, blah. And then they would go over, and then I would not see them the next day. It was day 3, and all of a sudden, like, the phone rings, and I'm like, oh, I know what that is. Hey, Bobby, so I'm sending you a car to come over for dinner. I know this moment. The moment is like, I'm going to go home or not. Yeah, so no, I'm not going to be able to make it. And he's like, what? No, you have to come. It's great for your career. So I'm like, yeah, no, I'm cool, Bruce, but thank you very much. And then all of a sudden my phone rings, like, in probably 1 minute. It was just like less than 2 minutes. It rang again, and I was like, what? And I picked it up, and it's like, hey, Bobby, unfortunately, you're going to be cut, and your flight's ready, and your bags, or get your bags ready, and then you have a flight tonight. It was just like, in that instant, I was done.
And again, these are some of the alleged models making the allegations that they were coerced into, can I word this? They were kind of like given an ultimatum that you come to my dinner. He would invite you. Bruce Weber allegedly will invite these models to his home or hotel or wherever they were during the photo shoots. And they would just say, come to dinner. And if they didn't go, they were sent home. They were, okay, well, since you don't want to get down like that, your modeling career is over.
And then you had Michael Jeffries. It was like he was just there to have fun on the shoots. He very clearly was into young men, too. But he was just so weird that who knows what the fuck. I don't know what that dude is into. It seemed like they were always implementing like a new step to the process. One of which was you had to go into like this tent that was closed off, and it was just Bruce Weber and Michael Jeffries in there. Literally, it was an interview for them to see if they liked your personality and who you were and I guess what you brought to the table.
When he ran Abercrombie, he always sold clothes to women and girls. But what I think most people saw and responded to was the male image and the male form.
I don't even think Mike realized that he was also a gay icon. It was known or presumed that he was gay, but he was very secretive about his personal life. In the early 2000s, Mike Jeffries was still very much closeted.
Jeffries had been married, had a son.
His wife was mostly out of the picture, and eventually his life partner, Matthew Smith, sort of came on within the company.
There's a lot that was probably going on internally with Mike Jeffries that very few people would have been privy to.
He was out of control, it was really out of control. It was like
Abercrombie and Bruce Weber did some video content.
This is Brandon, take one. Mark?
Okay, now this is a musical we're doing, and we need you to dance. Do you dance?
I don't really dance, but I pretend I dance, and that's usually good enough.
It was clear to anyone who was paying attention that there were many gay men involved in all of it. I think the brilliance of the brand was that was went right over the head of their target customer, like the straight college frat pro. After college, I moved to San Francisco and was working at XY Magazine, which was a magazine for young gay men. A lot of high school students would send us their photo, and they would send us an essay or an experience of what it was like being out in their high school. It was still possible in the late 90s to be a gay kid in Iowa and to think that you were the only one. More of those boys started wearing Abercrombie, and that fashion world and that kind of masculinity and whatever that meant, all of this was happening in the late 90s.
Abercrombie came to me and asked me to create the murals for the Abercrombie stores. These homoerotic but beautiful guys interacting with each other. They make you think about the eternal and that everything is forever good.
Okay, so again, that was a gentleman who was in charge of the advertising, where you have the photographer who would do the photo shoots, and you have the graphic house, or the people who would do the graphics for the advertising. You have the art director, and the art director would be the individual to sign off on the finished product that would go into the ads or any type of artwork or photography that will go into the stores itself. And again, this is a gentleman that said he was in charge of creating this allure of being over-sexualized male and females, because some of their artwork, some of the photographers had some women in it. But as he said, this homoerotic atmosphere that they were setting for the overall allure of Abercrombie and Fitch. So it seems as though that they were grooming children, they were grooming young adults, and no one had any idea. But it was all done through photography. It was all done through graphic designs and the power of image, or the power of images.
Wexner has been embroiled in scandals.
Just heading to a meeting. Thank you.
Les Wexner announced he was stepping down as CEO of L Brands.
He remains under scrutiny for his close ties to Jeffrey Epstein, the convicted sex offender and disgraced financier.
He not only signed over his entire fortune to Jeffrey Epstein, he let Jeffrey represent himself as a Victoria's Secret model scout. One of the biggest reasons Jeffrey Epstein was able to surround himself constantly with really hot young women. They thought that he could, make or break them.
A bombshell expose in the New York Times. Bruce Weber guilty of years of sexual misconduct and abuse.
Bruce Weber, of course, would be sued by legions of models.
Bruce told me I was tense and did some breathing exercises with me. At the time, I froze. I did not know how to respond. The entire experience was terrifying and humiliating.
Okay, so there you have it. As we were reporting yesterday, that as I knew that there were going to be other people connected to Abercrombie and Fitch in these allegations. And again, most of these people that is mentioned has never been reported on. And it's now coming to some sort of light. And those who I don't know, who don't know who Les Wexner is, other than being connected to Jeffrey Epstein, well, he's a billionaire businessman. He was the co-founder and chairman. Started out in Bath and Body Works, and I'm trying to think of the other stores. The Limited. Let me see. There was a couple of other stores. Victoria's Secrets. Yes, he had acquired that lingerie business, Victoria's Secrets, and that goes back to 1982. And I'm trying to find an article. It says Victoria's Secrets attracted Wexner's interest due to the unique high quality merchandise and Victorian era decor of the shop, which featured red velvet sofas. Wexner described, he was talking about the store, or actually he's talking about the gentleman who actually he put in charge of it. Goes by the name of Roy Raymond. And it says here, when I met him, it was as if he met the devil. And I guess that's Roy Raymond's first impression of Les Wexner. So 6 months later, with Raymond was facing bankruptcy, he contacted Wexner and offered to sell Victoria's Secrets. Wexner bought the company for $1 million, and by 1992 it was worth an estimate of $1 billion. After Wexner assumed ownership, Victoria's Secrets became widely known for marketing its items with the use of supermodels, which is also featured in an annual fashion show overseen by a gentleman called Ed Razik. By 2015, sales were in decline, and by 2018 was the final year for the Victoria's Secret fashion show. And we all know, of course, Wexner actually allowed Jeffrey Epstein to be the one person to look for the models for the fashion shows. Get that. So it says here, and this is going back to an article in New York Times. What year was this? This is 2019. This is an article from the New York Times. It says how Jeffrey Epstein used the billionaire behind Victoria's Secret for wealth and women. In May 1997, Alicia Arden, a model in California, was introduced to a man who identified himself as a talent scout for Victoria's Secret. He invited her to a Santa Monica hotel room to audition for the brand's catalog. When she arrived, Miss Arden said the man grabbed her, tried to undress her, and said he wanted to manhandle her. Miss Arden, then 27, fled in tears. It was a type of crisis that should not have come as a complete surprise to leaders at L Brands, the parent company of Victoria's Secrets. In the mid-1990s, two senior executives had discovered that the same man, a close advisor to the company's chief executive, Leslie H. Wexner, was trying to pitch himself as a recruiter for Victoria's Secret's models. Mr. Wexner was alerted, according to the two executives. It is unclear what, if any, action Mr. Wexner took in response. But the man, Jeffrey E. Epstein, a New York financier, had developed an unusual strong hold on Mr. Wexner, one of the country's most influential corporate titans. Within years of meeting Mr. Epstein, Mr. Wexner handed him sweeping powers over his finances, philanthropy, and private life. According to interviews with people who knew the man, as well as court documents and financial records, Mr. Wexner authorized him to borrow money on his behalf, to sign his tax returns, to hire people, and to make acquisitions. Over the years, Mr. Epstein obtained a New York mansion, a private plane, and a luxury estate in Ohio, today valued at roughly $100 million altogether. Previously owned by Mr. Wexner or his companies, at the same time, he drove a wedge between Mr. Wexner and longtime associates and friends. Virtually from the moment in the 1980s that Mr. Epstein arrived on the scene in Columbus, Ohio, where L brands were based, Mr. Wexner friends and colleagues were mystified as to why a renowned businessman in the prime of his career would place such trust in an outsider with a thin resume and scant financial expertise. It is a mystery that has taken on new importance in the weeks since federal prosecution in New York charged Mr. Epstein, at the time he was 66, with sex trafficking involving girls as young as 14. And it is a posing and potential grave problem for L Brands, publicly traded company whose brand included Victoria's Secrets and Bath and Body Works. Mr. Wexner, the largest serving chief executive in the S&P 500 and L Brands' largest shareholders, once praised Mr. Epstein as a most loyal friend with excellent judgment and unusually high standards. So again, this is very interesting how all of this is starting to connect. It's all starting to make sense. Even though Epstein supposedly had unalived himself. I don't know, maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But it's starting to make sense that at the time, they were probably trying to sweep a lot of this stuff under the rug, or they were trying to hide a lot of these connections. But now it seems that everything is slowly starting to come out and people are starting to be connected. This is just the beginning. As I said yesterday evening, this is just the beginning, because there is a lot more people that is connected. And again, it seems as though this clothing brand, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, I have no proof, but it seems as though this clothing brand, Abercrombie Fitch, was a front to attract young adults for a prostitution ring. Mainly men, but not excluding younger girls. Because all these players, these usual suspects, are all connected. Again, this is just the beginning, and we're going to keep probing, and we're going to keep looking into this. So, I don't know, stay tuned. Thank you once again for listening. We'll be back with you again soon.
Go on, you've got another 5 seconds. Say something outrageous.
You dirty bastard.
Go on, again.
You dirty fucker.
What a clever boy.
What a fucking rotter.
Well, that's it for tonight.